Hello, everybody. This is Rob Fredette with the podcast HODGEPOD, and welcome. We're going to be talking about the movie The Usual Suspects in 1995. To this day, it still confuses me, the movie, when I watch it. And my guest on my podcast is Mark Diette, and he has a podcast, and he also has some co-hosts, and the name of the podcast is The Double Take. And if you like movies, this is a podcast to listen to. Mark, welcome to my podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Tell me about your podcast, The Double Take. When did you start it, and how's it going? And I've listened to The Usual Suspects, and I think you also did Top Gun, did you not?
We sure did. So, yeah, The Double Take, I have a love for movies, and so The Double Take is basically about movies that we like to rewatch as many times as we can. I mean, I would say 20 to 30 times over the course of our life, right? So 80s, 90s, 2000s, those types of movies. Some movies we just rewatchable movies is basically what it comes down to. So we love them. We talked about them anyway. We decided to record ourselves. So I got my co-host Terrence on there with me, and then we bring on different guests as they become fans of movies as well.
Excellent. That's perfect. And you mentioned watching a movie 20 or 30 times. Just to sidetrack here, Die Hard's my all-time favorite movie, and I've watched it over 100 times. So nice. I'm not afraid to say that, but I pick out new things every now and then. So we're going to be talking The Usual Suspects. When I asked you to come on, I was really psyched to talk about it because this movie to this day still confuses me. I tried to watch it, and then it's like, how did I miss that? And what's your thoughts on The Usual Suspects? And then we'll talk about the fun stuff.
Well, before we get into that, too, I want to let you know that we have recorded a Die Hard episode, and it'll be released shortly.
Oh,
so you can stay tuned for our take on that.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
So I don't have a release date yet, but I'll let you know.
Please do. Please do.
All right. So The Usual Suspects, like you mentioned, in 1995, in my opinion, this was the height of really good movies. And I think that's been emphasized by the movies that we get today. There's some good movies out there today, don't get me wrong, but I just think around this era, you had a lot more like originality with scripts and different things. And nowadays you get a lot more like wash and repeat, But yeah, for Usual Suspects, for me personally, I love a good heist movie. This movie I consider kind of a heist movie. Like I think there's a lot of little things in here that, it's a lot of plans. When you think of a movie like this, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And like you said, it confuses you at the end because like who saw that coming? Like you just don't know, right? Yeah. So it's a movie that's got you thinking the whole way through. You're entertained the whole way through. Good dialogue and just good action at the same time. So yeah, this is one of my favorites, and we were so excited to do it, and I'm excited that you're excited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when you think of the cast, the cast of this, we're talking now almost 30 years ago. So on the cast, it was Kevin Spacey, Stephen Baldwin, Kevin Pollak, Benicio del Toro, Gabriel Byrne, and Chaz Palminteri. You can't get much better than that, and the way they cast these characters was really awesome, and I kind of felt bad for these guys as the movie was going on. I said, don't go there or don't do that, but what did talk about the cast because absolutely incredible. I was hooked the whole time. I'm sure you were.
Oh, for sure. And I think that when as of today, it's Kevin Spacey. I don't want to say he has a bum rap because he kind of did it to himself by his things, right? But he was in the prime of his career, I think, when this came out, or this was maybe the beginning. This was like the start of the Kevin Spacey era. And it's too bad because I think he's a fantastic actor. And there's a lot of things in here that, he just had an incredible run of movies. You know what I mean? Like if you started with Usual Suspects in 95, like just real quick, I'll just run down a couple here. And
sure,
all these movies
absolutely.
You're going to love. He did Outbreak in 95, Seven in 95. So that right there, that's a great year. He was also in A Time to Kill, also released in 95.
Wow. LA
Confidential, 97. The Negotiator, one of my favorite Samuel Jackson movies, by the way. He was the voice in Bug's Life. He did American Beauty, which I think a lot of people may know him as. And that kind of tailed his 90s. I mean, he has plenty of things in the 2000s, like Pay It Forward. He did a version of Lex Luthor and Superman. 21 was a good movie based on a book. And then Baby Driver was the last movie that I remember seeing him in. That was 2017. But he had that run of movies where he's just incredible. Like you put him in like he's an incredible actor. It's just unfortunate about his off-screen problems, I guess we'll call them. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And Stephen Baldwin was McManus, and Michael McManus. I thought he played that part perfectly. And I went and looked at some of the movies that he has done over his acting career. And would you say this is his highlighted best movie that he did?
100%. I find it very unfortunate that he didn't get more roles just like this one. I wish he was typecast as McManus in every movie he did, because he was phenomenal in this. You know what I mean? Like he's a Baldwin, right? So right away he's probably got an ego bigger than you'd care to have, right? But I just think that a movie like this, like he was awesome in it. Like I wish he did more like tough guy, gangster type. Like it could have been a buddy cop movie or something. You know, a little disappointing.
Yeah,
that's all we got.
He was basically a hothead. He wanted to kick ass all the time. That's the way I saw him. Spacey, of course, played Verbal Kent. So in the film, he was called by Chaz Palminteri, who we'll talk about, a cripple. But he was really a different character. And then you had Kevin Pollak. He was like the street tough guy, level-headed, but yet he liked to mix it up with the boys in the group there.
Yeah, this was a good role for Kevin Pollak. He's a comedian, right? So he's a comedian with good acting chops, great acting chops, because this was a different role that you've seen him in. You've probably seen him in like, you know, A Few Good Men was one of my favorite roles for him as well. But I mean, I've seen this guy do stand up. I mean, he does a fantastic Christopher Walken impersonation. If you've ever seen that, you should look it up. But yeah, he was everything you said about the cast, right? You had a nice variety of just different takes between, you got McManus or Baldwin playing McManus. You got Kevin Pollak. I mean, I know we'll get into Del Toro in just a minute here, but just good balance of characters, right? And again, that gets back to what I was saying earlier. I don't think you see as much of that nowadays as you did back in this movie era. Yeah,
and then you just mentioned Benicio del Toro, Fred Fenster. What a name, Fenster. He was the cool cat in the whole thing. He knew where his place was in the group. He played that part perfectly as well.
They when they were filming this, he actually kind of took it to another level, because when he read the script, he said that like he realized that his role in this was basically just to die, right? So it didn't have any like plot moving lines, right? So that's why he just kind of took it to the next level. So when you see him in there and like the lineup and, oh, he'll flip you for real, man, like all his little things that he would do, right? He just didn't give a crap, because he was like, I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to bring it. And I'll be honest, like him bringing it made this movie for me, because he, again, favorite, I don't want to say favorite all-time character for Del Toro, but this has got to be like 1 and 2 for me with him up there. He's got to be in the tops, because it was just a fun role to watch with him.
Yeah, I kind of felt bad for him when he got killed in the movie. I was like, oh, man, Fenster's gone. And then it was just like you were hoping that whole group would go onto the boat at the end of the movie. But I felt bad for Fenster. I felt bad for all the bad guys in this movie.
But it's hard to call them bad guys. Like, I know they're criminals, right? But like you pulling for them, right? You want them to succeed because you like them, right? Yeah, I thought his death didn't do him any justice. Like, they cut to one scene and they're talking about him, he's dead in a cave or something. And it's too bad. I thought they could have done more with him.
Yeah, and I love the part there when Redfoot met them the first time out in L.A. and he goes, Fenster, and he just like gave that little like, what's up, like that. I thought that was just like perfect. I love that part right there. That was awesome. And then Gabriel Byrne played Dean Keaton, sort of a conflicted character in the movie. I mean, I felt bad for him because he was with the lawyer, Finneran. Felt bad for him, but he was always like wanted to. Like, you could just tell. You see, he was conflicted in the movie, wanting to maybe get out, but yet he was still hooked in by the group.
Yeah, and I thought that was a pretty good, like, kind of. I don't want to say like a cliche heist movie, but like, there's one guy that's like, no more jobs for me, guys. I'm done. Like, I'm out. I'm going straight. And then, when they're sitting in the jail cell and McManus is like, yeah, all right, if you say so, but here's the plan, right? And then they just, and then they suck him back in because something always happens. And, as you find out later, it's all part of Kaiser Soze's plan anyway. But but yeah, again, it was the dynamic of the different characters. You didn't have multiple versions of the same character. They all brought something different. And that's sort of what makes this movie stand out to me. One of the reasons.
Yeah, and there was also when they had the jobs, they had that unified to take care of that job that they were doing, especially when they in the movie when they commandeered the cop car there. And I love that part in the movie. Will this get me to Staten Island? The guy goes, yeah, this will get you to Cape Cod. Just a little humor there in the movie. I thought that was freaking hilarious. Yep. I thought that was awesome. And then we got Chaz Palminteri. I think he played this part masterful as Dave Kujan. And I always thought like he was really getting under Verbal Kint character by Kevin Spacey. He thought he had him, but he played that perfectly.
Well, that role was cast, basically created for him.
Wow.
He came in and filmed his parts in about 2 weeks. He had just a couple of the scenes, obviously the big, police station interrogation scene. And yeah, it was, I agree. He was perfect in this. There's a couple movies that he's in. I'm a fan of him, but A Bronx Tale is the big one for me that I love about Chaz. But if you ever seen the movie Pool Hall Junkies, that's another movie to check out. It's from 2002. Christopher Walken's in that too. But just like if you like him as an actor, and in this movie, obviously you do. But I think, yeah, I appreciate what he is. I don't think there's a lot of people that could have came in and played that role. I think De Niro might have been up for it at one point, but I think Chaz did a great job.
And when you talk about the movie, it starts at the very beginning. You don't know what's going on. You see Gabriel Byrne, you see Keaton lying on a boat, and he says he can't feel his legs, and it's like, what's going on here? And then right after that, they cut away to Verbal Kint. So kind of gets you wondering what's going on in the movie.
Well, that's the beauty of this, like the good writing, the way that it's filmed. Like I mentioned in the beginning, right? It keeps you interested because right away you're curious. You're like, wait a minute, like what's going on? What's this boat on fire? What's happening here? Why is the guy from Breaking Bad a cop in this? Right? What's his name? I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but Giancarlo Esposito, right? Yeah. So he's like a detective or something in there. And it's like, man, what's happening? But it gets you right away.
They commandeer all the usual suspects in the jail cell. So that was pretty much, they had them all in the jail cell. So that kind of gets the movie going. But what did you think about that opening scene there when they're all in the jail cell as the movie gets started?
The interrogation scenes in movies to me are awesome. I think that this is really a chance, like as actors, right? It's really a chance for them to shine. And they do that in this. Like I mentioned Del Toro, how he's in there and he's talking about it, like his friend, and he'll flip you and all this stuff, right? But yeah, you get a piece of them in there. You get them in the lineup where you get Kevin Spacey's character in this case. He's kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? He's not monologuing, but he's narrating as we go, right? And he's letting you know what's happening. And I thought there was just a perfect amount of narration in this too. Like it didn't give away the movie, but it just lets you know what they're leading you to what they want you to think, which in this case is, oh, they put this together and you never get 5 criminals in a lineup. Like I wouldn't know that. I'm not in lineups, right? So I don't know if it's criminals or fake people. I don't know. So yeah, it set the stage and it, like you said, like it just kicks in and you're like, all right, I want to know more about all these characters. There's not a character at this point that I'm like, I could do without this person. Like they all bring something and I love it.
Yeah, and we can't talk about the lineup without talking about Stephen Baldwin's tirade there when he dropped those F-bombs there. I've watched that now like 3 or 4 times before we get ready. And do you have any sense of how many takes it took to do that episode, that scene right there? Because if that was the first take, it was perfect.
I can say that I don't believe it was the first take because
really?
if what I read was no, I said not the first take. They didn't do it in one because Del Toro actually kept farting on there, which is why they're all laughing.
Oh my God. It's amazing how they just
this is
that was a great scene. I mean, you could just see all of them just like couldn't contain themselves in that scene. I think that was perfect. What about
let me ask you this, Rob, right? Yeah. If you go back to sorry to interrupt you there.
No.
When you go back to watch the movie now, like when you know how it ends, So this is what I did the last time I watched it. I know how it ends. So I was trying to find ways that maybe were giveaways or kind of red herrings to say like, not red herrings, that's the wrong term, but like where does it show in there that it gave away of who the villain actually was in this? Right. Yeah. And I'll be honest, like it was so good. I didn't see a lot of ways that convinced me like who it might have been. And I think that's a testament to the writing and the way that it was filmed as well. Cause I'm like, well, I know it's Kevin Spacey. He's the guy. Right. But I was looking for like how they might have given hints. So if you're a keen audience member, like, you know, maybe you catch on, but I never did. After seeing it dozens of times, I still didn't know.
Actually, I watched it twice in the last 10 days just to see. And there was one episode, I wrote it down, one scene where he says, "Who's Kaiser Sose?" And they would cut away, or when Kobayashi would talk, they would cut away to Kevin Spacey. But that's just after watching it, you know, several times. But I think he goes, "Who's Kaiser Sose?" I thought that was maybe one giveaway there. But other than that, you know, I thought that you just never knew who it was. And I feel like after watching it now that Spacey's character played all these guys. I mean, he came across as the weak part of the chain, but he definitely was the manipulator of all these guys.
Yeah, he was 5 steps ahead of everybody the entire thing. You know, when they were I'm just bundled with some fun facts when I did a lot of research when we were looking at this movie, right? So when they gave everyone the script, they didn't tell anyone who Kaiser Soze actually was. So at one point, all the actors thought that they were Kaiser Soze. And the rumor was that Gabriel Byrne thought he was Kaiser Soze. And he was so pissed when he found out afterwards that he wasn't going to end up being him and that it was, you know, Kevin Spacey. And, you know, it played well because I think, you know, as you talked about Chaz Palminteri in there, like he was convinced it was Gabriel Byrne. He's leading the audience to say, "Hey, it's Keaton. This is the guy," you know? So it's obviously better the way that it turned out, but you know, I thought that was just little tidbits of stuff I find interesting when I'm researching a movie.
Yeah. And when I watched it a few times and I was getting ready for this, I found that the acting by Kevin Spacey was just really, even when he was in the interrogation room with Chaz Palminteri at the very beginning there, he was still like manipulating him. He wanted a cup of coffee, talking about these things that were not even part of the subject, but he kind of like got Kujan to do what he needed to do. He hadn't even started interrogating yet. So just maybe those little clues that were the manipulation of Chaz Palminteri's character, he really was able to, you know, see it subliminally that he was, you know, like manipulating everybody in the movie.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the beauty of the villain in this, the overall villain capabilities, that he's, you know, multiple moves ahead of everybody else. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. It took me a little while to realize like what they were doing on the boat. So there was one guy in the boat that could identify him. So he's hiring this crew to kill everyone on the boat so that no one knows who he is. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, just everything about it to me is just, and as we said, I rewatch it because even though I know how it ends, I don't care. You know, I'm still entertained by this. Like that's what I love about, that's what makes a good movie. That's what makes, in my opinion, a double take movie, because you can continue to watch it even when you know.
Yeah. And when you speak about that part where McManus and they were on the boat there and McManus goes down in, I guess, the hull of the boat, and, you know, his character just got shot after he opened the case of money, and it's like, don't go down there. Don't go down there. It's like, you know, don't do it. Don't do it. I was like, I don't want you to like get killed. And that was like, it says there's no coke on the boat. And he goes, "I'm out of here." It's just like, oh my gosh, this is not going to end well.
No. And and like you said earlier, like it's too bad Fenster died, because that would have been a cool heist if Fenster was part of it, you know, but to me, like that, a scene, like the different heists in the movie, there was like, I think 3 like main heists in the movie that they did. And I like a well-planned movie heist. So I thought that, you know, the New York's Finest you mentioned earlier, that was a great one. And then when they got the other dude in the parking lot when they went to see Redfoot, so they steal his stuff or whatever, and they do that, like also a good one. Like they planned that pretty good. And then you get to the boat heist, and one of my like kind of nitpicks, if you will, was I just thought that was a shitty plan. You know, it just wasn't a good plan for this boat. It's like I don't know. Like you got a boat of 20 something guys. And I don't know.
Yeah.
That was my disappointing part. Like it was a good scene. Don't get me wrong. Just not very believable, right? You get this boat that's probably what, was it 200 feet, like this big boat. And within a matter of minutes, you got McManus and maybe Keaton, like scanning every room on this boat for what they're looking for. A couple kilos of coke. Like this could be hidden in like a kitchen cabinet in the galley. You know what I mean? And it's like, after 10 minutes, well, there's no coke. Like, I'm out of here. Like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, he goes, I'm out of here. I'm like, what? And then all of a sudden he goes, Keaton, what's the matter? He goes, oh man. And I was like, oh no, not McManus. But you spoke about the scene in the parking garage. The again, another great scene by Stephen Baldwin there when he was pointing the guns and he was just doing his thing. I thought that was again, you wish you would have seen him more in those roles. I thought he would have been tremendous, like you just said earlier.
He had the opportunity to be a pretty good action star, and he just really didn't, you know. And it's too bad. I mean, I don't know what he's doing these days. Probably not a whole lot, but you know, he had that stretch. I can't even think of the only other movie I can think of with him. I think was like Biodome with Pauly Shore, you know, and like that was just goofy, right? Like not an action movie. I don't know.
And then 50.
Not recommended by me. I don't know.
No, yeah, I totally forgot about that movie, Pauly Shore. My goodness gracious! But then we have our friend Kobayashi showing up. 52 minutes. I marked that down when I was watching. Comes in 52 minutes into the movie, played by Pete Postlethwaite, and he was a very convincing character. He could be very ruthless in the way he spoke, but he was always polite. If you excuse me, gentlemen.
Yep. He's the lawyer, as they call him, right? I like him as an actor too.
Yeah.
You know, rest in peace. I think he passed away a few years ago, but he's had a couple cool roles over his career. So when this being the first one that I remember seeing him in, but you think at one point he's Kaiser Soze. You're like, of course he's Kaiser Soze. But then he's like, oh, this is my employer. It's who I work for. And I'm like, if I'm ever going to be a criminal mastermind, you're going to have one or two guys like Kobayashi that's going to work for you. And I love that, you know, because that way you never have to talk to anyone. You just have one guy in there. And like you said, he's polite, but slightly intimidating. You know what I mean? Just by his politeness, you're like, why is this guy so polite to me? Like, what's going on? Like, you know, you just don't know what he's capable of. And it's good, juicy role for him, I think.
Yes, he was sophisticated. That's the word. I always like the
there you go.
You said you just did a Die Hard episode like Hans Gruber. He was very sophisticated, but he could be ruthless and mean in the same breath. So I kind of like that in a villain as well. So Kobayashi, he's really pretty much in on it, and then he shows up in the part there with the suitcase, and they had a couple of chances. Give me a good reason not to kill you now, and again, he puts the guys in a little pickle there. Because they know their life story.
Yeah, that's when they're in the pool room.
Yeah,
I think they might have been in California. I think at the time, I forget. But yeah, he shows up with like I said, the suitcase with the dossiers of all their life's work and all the different, as they say, like every job they've done, everyone they've ever worked with, and I mean that's some good private investigating, if I do say so. I mean, I don't know if you try to Googling people, but that's not always easy to get. So, no. It's pretty impressive back in 95. There's no internet back then. So you're doing some legwork. That's for sure.
Yeah, I love Redfoot character played by Peter Green. He's always played some great characters as far as the villain. He just plays that part so perfectly. It's just he's a natural for it. He was a natural for it. I remember him in the movie Judgment Night. I don't know if you ever saw that one with Dennis Leary.
Oh, yeah.
Man, oh man, that movie is just insane. Also, he plays a bad guy in a few other movies, but he was an integral part of that movie as well.
That's what a role actually. It's funny. They tried to, like, a lot of people wanted that role because it was a quick little, spicy, juicy little spot where, he might have had maybe 10 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And there was, a couple people that they were considering for the role was like Pacino was one, Jeff Bridges at the time, Tommy Lee Jones in 95, even James Spader. I don't know if James Spader in 95 would have been good. James Spader in 2015 would be perfect.
Yeah,
right? Because he's a little more intimidating and, but but yeah, I thought they got the cast right on that. You know, he was a virtual nobody at the time, but he was great. He did good things on that space.
Yeah, that was. And then when they went back there at night in L.A., the boys there were all everybody was looking out for them. I kind of felt bad for those guys after that, because it's kind of like it's them against the world. They just got played, and it's like insane that still don't get along, but they still had to do the job. They had to do something to, get that payoff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's, like you said, like with Keaton, well, just one more job. Just, okay, yeah. This is the last job, guys, and then it leads to, 3 more or whatever it is. And then ultimately your death, or, someone's holding something over your head. Oh, you got my girlfriend covered, or I just want to get out. I'm trying to run a restaurant, or whatever he's doing. And nope.
Well, they gave Fenster a nice little send off there when they buried him in the beach there. I guess they gave him his dignified bury there, but, again, Fenster was, I thought, like you said earlier, I thought he was out of that movie too early.
Yeah, I agree. But what I like about this is the one thing that works with having Fenster die so early is it leaves you wanting more. Like, you want more Fenster, and I think that when you go back and watch the movie, you just really appreciate the handful of scenes that Fenster's in, and the dialogue that he has. It's like Seinfeld, right? You gotta go out on top. So they go out wanting more. You gotta go out before your time, so people could want you. So and it worked, because I love Del Toro in this.
Yeah, he was. That was just an incredible scene. So the movie, it budgeted about $6 million when it came out, grossed about $67 million. Directed by Bryan Singer, released on August 16th, 1995. $67 million back in 95 is not a bad box office on a $6 million budget.
No, did you know that Ebert only gave this 1.5 stars?
He did?
And this movie was on, it was on his most hated list.
Really?
I'm like, what? Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
He has a stupid star scale. I think they only do like 4 stars. I'm not sure like how you do that, but just the flip side of that is when you go to Rotten Tomatoes, I believe it's somewhere around like 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, which tells you that like the fans love it. Sorry, Ebert, you didn't win this one.
No, this I remember when the movie came out, I saw it in the theaters, and it was just like wow, it's like incredible how the ending we'll talk about later, but part also with Kobayashi when he had Keaton's girlfriend there, Miss Finneran, in the conference room. That was, like I said, they know everywhere to get somebody, and they knew everything. And again, Keaton, I had to feel bad for him. I don't know about you, but I felt really bad for Keaton in that scene right there. And that one cutaway where they had Keaton on the reflection on the glass was incredible. How they did that. He was looking in. She couldn't see him, but he could see inside the conference room. I thought that scene was really done excellent.
Yeah, it's good cinematography for sure. It makes you, and you just said it, right? It makes you feel for him. Here you are, this group of criminals, and you're like, oh man, like I really want to Keaton to win. Like don't hurt his girlfriend, but the fact is, you play with matches, you're going to get burned at some point, right? Like you're a criminal, like that's the life. Most criminals don't retire, right? Not these violent criminals that, so it is what it is. And she'd end up being probably a victim of his career, I guess. But yeah, it's, I thought of all the characters, we talked about how much we liked them as a group.
Yeah.
To be honest, Keaton's the one that I cared less about. Of all the criminals in there, like I said, McManus, you get Hockney, which was what's his face?
Kevin Pollak.
Kevin Pollak. Yeah. So yeah, Kevin Pollak, Baldwin, and Del Toro. Like those 3 alone, right there. Like those 3 make the movie for me as far as the criminals go. And then Chaz Palminteri. Like those are my favorite people in this movie. Everyone else to me is kind of filler that fills in.
Yeah,
and of course Kevin Spacey, but we already talked about him.
Yeah, we did, and I love the part too in the conference room when Kobayashi went to go sit down next to Miss Finneran, and he looks at her and he looks at Keaton and he nods his head yes, like you take care of that, and look back at Miss Finneran. That was and we just talked about. Again, he can be very distinguished, but yet behind that facade, he is a ruthless man.
Yeah, a little creepy, right? A little creepy in that scene.
It was really weird. I mean, I felt bad for Keaton. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? So let's talk about Chaz Palminteri, because he really, I thought, when I saw the movie the first time, I thought he was really going to get everything out of Kevin Spacey's Verbal Kent. And he seemed to like think he had one up on him. But as the movie starts getting towards the end, starts shifting a little bit, and he thinks he's got him. But again, the manipulation by Kevin Spacey and Verbal Kent in that movie was just, again, tremendous.
That's the thing with Chaz, right? I love him as an actor, and when you see him in like a Bronx Tale, and you see him in a Pool Hall Junkies, and he's just this hugely confident person, right? And no different in this. He's this confident FBI agent or whatever he is, right? But at the end, like, he got burned. He got played by a better player. In this case, Kevin Spacey. And, I absolutely love the reveal when he's talking to the other dude in the other, whose office he's in. I forget the actor's name, the cop that's there. And, and he turns around and he looks at the wall, and then again, the cinematography, right? When they show the wall, it's like, oh man, like everyone, I mean, the first time you see this, you're like, holy crap. Like, did I just witness this? Like, is this real? Is this happening? It's awesome. It's just awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned that part there in the office. So I watched the ending last week for the first time because I was watching the other parts of the movie. And obviously, if you watch the movie, you know what the ending is, but I wanted to get a sense of what that ending was like. And he's sitting there in the office and he's drinking the coffee and he's very content, and he lets Verbal Kent go. And it's like, uh-oh. It's like, so then he leaves and he gets his gold watch and he gets his items and he's walking out. And like you said, he's reading the bulletin board over there. And then the way that cup dropped and broke was just like powerful. It's 3 times you see like that cup breaking. And then all of a sudden he realizes he's been played. And I thought that was just unbelievable at the very end of the movie. And then when he walks out and Verbal Kent's walking down the sidewalk, that blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. I don't know about you. And I'm like, turn your head, move. And I was like, I was doing that the other night. I was like, no, you got to catch him.
Right. Well, you know what's funny about that scene? If you watch it, right, and this is, I don't know if it's a curse or a gift, I'm not really sure, but I watch these movies and I start looking for little like nitpicks in the movie. So it's like a Tuesday afternoon, and he walks out of the police station, and all of a sudden there's so much hustle and bustle going on the curb. Yeah. There's food vendors and all these people are just like hanging around. Like every cop movie you watch, like the police station's on the corner. No one's near it. No one wants to be near a police station, but not this one. This one has, it's like a state fair going on outside the police station. So you can't see anybody. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, the reveal itself, like you said, was awesome. Like the way that they filmed it with the foot and then his hand when he gets his lighter and he starts flicking the lighter, because there's a couple scenes throughout the movie where he's trying to light and he can't. And then you see him get that lighter. And I'm like, oh man, it was awesome.
Yeah. And that part there, it was 7 steps before he started walking normally. And when Chaz Palminteri like runs out and you see the car, and it's like, turn your head, Kujan, turn. And he just looks like,
look to the right, man. He's right there.
He's like, he knew he got played, and it was like, oh man, I was like, I couldn't believe that. And when I saw that movie for the first time in the theaters, I was like, what the hell just happened? I mean, that's the mark of a great movie.
I agree. When you have no idea what's happening, like when it takes the audience for a ride. And there's very few movies that do that. To Kevin Spacey's credit, I mean, the same thing happened in 7. I don't know if you enjoyed the end of 7 as well, but same kind of idea where, you just don't know, right? I mean, it's crazy because you take in 95, and this is why this movie worked, in my opinion, is because you had Kevin Spacey, who was not really not a big name actor at the time, right? If you put Dustin Hoffman, for example, or somebody famous in 95 that is a big actor, and you put them in that Verbal Kent role, they're not going to you're not going to believe that this big name actor took a little minor role just to be a henchman on a crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So immediately you're going to start thinking that, something's going to happen. Like he doesn't take a role this big as a part-time, like Tom Cruise is not taking a second fiddle role to anybody, for example, right?
Exactly.
So, but Kevin Spacey, no one knows who he is, right? So they're like, who cares? Like you kind of overlook him subconsciously. And then when it turns to be him, you're like, oh man, like, all right, you got me here. Like, good for you. You movie one, mark none, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was, and when they cast movies and you look back at the movies from years ago, even, recent movies, and you watch the movies over and over again, and the casting for the movie, every time you watch it, the casting was done perfectly, especially like in this movie, or if you're looking at like Die Hard, the one that you just cut. Bruce Willis, absolutely perfect as John McClane. Hans Gruber, best villain in my opinion of all time, but that's another story. But yeah, you got people who are cast, and it just lives through immortality as far as films are concerned, and that's what really makes film awesome, because you can watch these movies over and over again.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about villains, because we started doing on a couple episodes like that are worthy. We've done we started something called a villain scale. So we try to rate villains not against other villains in other movies, but we rate them against like themselves. Like, just if you think about either TV shows or movies or books or whatever, cartoons, doesn't matter. Like, what are some villain traits? So we just compiled a list of villain traits and we go through them. And Kaiser Soze was one. Mentioned Hans Gruber. I think those two, I don't remember the exact ranking. I'd have to look up my notes, but those two so far have been the two biggest villains. So,
nice.
So here we are talking about one, and then you mentioned the other one, so yeah, it's awesome. So you're right. I mean, that's what makes a good movie. You know what I mean? That's not their goal isn't like, oh, I'm a bad guy, I want to rule the world. Okay, thanks. We got it. You know what I mean? But this here, it's just, they're manipulative. They're just, it's good.
Yeah.
It's just good.
Well, we talked about the last scene, and, back in 95, cell phones were out, but they didn't have like the iPhone back then. And that part when they faxed I forgot they had faxed the composite sketch of Kaiser Soze. I forgot about that. And it's like, go out there, get him. And he's just sitting there collectively, content drinking that coffee. And that's why I like watching movies, because you don't see cell phones. You see the technology, and you see the dress, and you see the cars from those times. And I just love that it's part of the nostalgia of watching these movies.
Well, that's, maybe that's what's part of it. When I was saying at the top of the show, like about how movies were just different, maybe that's part of it. Maybe part of it is there's like the internet, the phones, there's not the conveniences of technology back in the day. So you can't just, I don't know, like I'm sure when you were a kid, right, you're trying to find your friends, there's no GPS and say where they're at. Like you call their house. Oh, is Jimmy home? No. Oh, maybe he's at the park. So now you're going to the park. Oh, maybe he's at Scott's house, and like, maybe you find him, maybe you don't. Right. But, nowadays you got a group text and like, everybody meet here, and then everybody's there, and it's easy. Right. But back in these days, like you said, they didn't have that kind of GPS. You didn't have that kind of internet research to find these things out. You had fax machines, not, hey, send me an email and I'll get the picture.
Yeah,
I just sent it to your phone. You know what I mean? They have iPhones back then. Kevin Spacey's not walking out of that police station. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Game over.
That's what I like. I mean, I just love the way that fax came through, and the way Chaz, the agent who was at the hospital, it's amazing. Just like the split second. I mean, Murphy's Law. It's like, oh man, I just, that last scene just still blows my mind. It really does.
I think that Agent Kujan on this, right? So Chaz Palminteri, I think, we love him as a character, but if you think about it, if you go back and you watch like his interrogation, he's a little short-sighted, because he went into it with Keaton in mind as the villain. And you can't, like, he wasn't open to different things. And if you watch a lot of cop movies or cop shows, and like you're going to assume it's a criminal, who the criminal is, and then you make your case to match what you think it is, and then you become a little short-sighted on the actual facts or other possibilities. And So, but you don't really pick up on that until after, because as an audience, you're listening and he's making a good case of why it's Keaton. You're like, oh yeah, like you're right. It's Keaton, man. Like good call. Thanks for telling me. You're not thinking like, no, it could be McManus or it could be this guy. Like you don't think any of that.
Wow. I just, right now I got it on my iPad. The last scene where Chaz is, Kujan's leaving and is like the stress on his face and he's looking. And then all of a sudden he walks normal, Verbal Kent walks normal, and then they show the facts, and then he takes his gold lighter out with the cigarette, and there you go. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Perfectly done.
So the lighter is the one piece. When I mentioned earlier how I was trying to figure out how can you tell it's him. The opening scene of the movie is when I think it's Keaton getting shot on the boat or on the side of the boat, and you see the dude come down the ladder, and he lights that lighter with his I believe it's his left hand, and that's I think was it the left hand? Was it Kevin Spacey's bad hand?
I believe so.
Yeah. So he lights the lighter with his left hand, and that's why then you see when you first see Verbal Kent, like it throws you off because it can't be him, definitely not him. And then there's another scene when they with the scene we talked about with McManus with the two guns, Verbal Kent actually shoots somebody. He shoots him with the right hand. I was actually hoping that they would have shot him with the left hand, but he shoots him with the right. And I was like, oh, that would have been what everybody missed. But they got it right.
And then also probably gain the trust of the other four, in the group there to knock those guys out. He gained the trust of those McManus from Fenster. You had Hockney and Keaton. So that was unexpected too for me because it was just Keaton just didn't want to pull that trigger. He was always holding back a little bit.
Well, that's part of the manipulation.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, they're not going to pick me unless you come, and he's like, all right, he starts feeling bad for him, like Keaton's got a heart, but that's the beauty of the criminal. Like you're just the smartest person in the room at all times. And you know what's going to happen 3 moves ahead.
So what, your podcast again, talk about your podcast again and what movies you've covered on your podcast and your co-host.
So my co-host is Terrence. A little background. This podcast is actually my second podcast.
Really?
I have a podcast called Casual Nonsense, which I started last year. So it was me and a couple of friends. We would sit around and we would just, we just BS about a little of everything. We loved movies, but at the time I didn't think a movie podcast. Like I was like, there's a lot of movie podcasts. I don't know how to do it. Right. So we created one basically called Casual Nonsense. And it's just that. It's like, it's about nothing. Like we would just get on there. I'd have different guests come on and do different things. And I did that for about a year, but about halfway, I still do it now, but halfway through, my passion for movies was starting to come out. And I said, I got to find somebody that can co-host with me. I need someone that I can count on. Mm-hmm. So one of the guests I had was a friend of a friend, Terrence. And, he's a big poker player. So we had an episode about him playing poker and he was on Sports Jeopardy and he had some cool stuff. So we just started talking and hanging out and we just talked about movies. And I just called him up one day and I was like, what do you think about doing this? You want to come on and co-host? And we did a couple episodes we did Rounders and the movie Warrior on Casual Nonsense. And it just felt good. And I was like, you know what? Like, we're going to do this. Let's put this together. So then the Double Take, we launched January of this year. And, we just kind of said, we're going to do as many as we can, but we're not going to overcommit. Like, we don't want to stress out. It's not a job. It's fun for us.
Absolutely.
And so every movie we pick is just something that we love. We haven't done any newer movies because the theme is kind of rewatchable movies. So something like, Dune or Dune 2, just comes out. It's like, well, I haven't seen that 10 times yet. So I don't know how much I can dive into that just yet. Good movies, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's ready. So we're just starting with movies that we love. Like we just sat down and said, well, you list 20 movies you love. I'll list 20 movies we love. And it turns out like half of them all matched up to be the same. So we're like, well, this is perfect, So, and we both know a couple of guys that also like movies. So I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, we're going to do Top Gun. And when the guy Scott that was on us with Top Gun, like he actually had background stories stories, like with him and his father-in-law, and he was giving us facts on the aircraft carriers that they're doing and different. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't know that we were going to do that when we started recording, but he had all this information, and I'm like, he blew me away. It was awesome. So we try to bring little tidbits out to the movies when we can. Try to, anyone can talk about a movie, and this is our theory. Anyone can talk about the movie, but we try to come up with some tidbits. And people will tell me that I can be a little opinionated, so I'm going to come up with my thoughts on characters and the actors that are in the movie. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love nostalgia. I love history. I love talking about music history and movie history, movies, and things of that nature. And it's really fun just to go back and talk about it because every time you hear a TV commercial on, or 90% of them play songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, and people are drawn to nostalgia. So. Question: how did you get to the concept of, when did you start like doing your podcast, or when did that thought come across you wanted to do a podcast? Because I always find it, maybe 5-6 years ago you weren't doing a podcast, and then boom, you start doing it. So what is that like?
It actually snuck up on me pretty quick. I started doing research. I worked with a guy who was on a radio show, so I started talking to him about what it's about. And I tell you, it was a challenge because you probably have at some point have gone through this. When you go to edit and you have to listen to your own voice, that's tough. You realize like the ums and the ahs and the different things that you say when you talk. So it's little challenges there. But when COVID started, I got a couple of friends, and we'd get on every Thursday night essentially, and we still do it to this day. We're game dorks, right? So we'll get on and play some Dungeons and Dragons, and we just do it remotely through Zoom. And we end up on there just kind of BSing with each other and, partially playing the game, but partially making fun of each other, talking about movies or TV shows. And then it just came up one day, like, hey, we should do a podcast. Yeah. And, I think they were joking, but I kind of ran with it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I went out and I got some equipment, and I've since upgraded the equipment a little bit. And, the wife supports me. So I got a little room in my house here where I try to soundproof it the best I can. And, you can't beat it, right? So
I got my man cave here, and I got you can hear an occasional lawnmower outside every once in a while, or a pickup truck driving by my house. But nonetheless, it's a lot of fun to do a podcast because we get to be creative and just talk about great movies like Usual Suspects, and it's really, really a lot of fun. Mark, I want to thank Mark Diette. I really want to thank you very much for coming on my podcast. Truly an honor to have you on, and check out the Double Take podcast. They talk about movies, and it's a lot of fun. And Mark, thanks again for jumping on here. I know you got a busy schedule.
Yeah, Rob, I appreciate you having me, man. And anytime you get a crazy talk, you want to talk about some movies, I'm down. You don't have to tell me twice.
Absolutely, man.